Now, look, interesting story this next. When we talk about drinking in New Zealand, what would be the quarter acre, half pint Pavlova paradise? Always about beer in New Zealand. You know, the great Spates brand that had the West Coast in rebellion sometime last century, I think it was. Waikato 4X, all those great beer brands, I should say. But, and then we went wine, didn't we? Then this country went wine, and we were all about the Chardonnay. And then Central Otago went all about the Pinot Noir. So making good alcohol is something New Zealanders are not unused to. But it seems the new penchant in New Zealand is for making spirits, the hard stuff. The stuff you drink in little glasses or make cocktails with. And apparently, like beer and like wine, we're pretty good at that too. And in fact, we're getting a bit of international kudos for this. So I thought, let's have a look at this. Let's see why spirits are rising in the spirits industry. And we're joined now from the head of Spirits New Zealand, Robert Brewer, which he isn't. Robert Distiller should be your name now, Robert.
I know. I'm going to change my name by deed poll very quickly.
All right. Is this a new phenomenon that spirits are a thing that the New Zealand, and let's booze, alcohol, alcoholic beverage industry is into? Is spirits a new thing or not?
Not really new per se, but there's no doubt that the spirits worldwide, actually, and particularly in what we call Western mature markets, which New Zealand would fall into that, are going through a massive renaissance and have been for a number of years. But we're just sort of seeing it now, and in particular with gin. Whiskies, malt whiskies and American whiskies have always been the heavy hitters and the big sellers, but gin has just gone off like Topsy. And, I wish I could say that my very smart people in the marketing and product development people around the world saw it coming, but they didn't. What happened was that there's been a set of consumer demand like nothing we've seen.
Yeah, now, I really think this is interesting because I think consumption like this is driven by social norms or social mores. I guess what we have had, and if we look at New Zealand specifically, Robert, we had a binge drinking culture, right? And because of the 6 o'clock swill, it was all about beer. And I don't know, how much beer could you drink? How much beer could you handle? We went to wine, which was more refined, and I think that changed our drinking habits. And I guess the further away you get from beer, you then get, and wine is a more refined thing to drink. Spirits, though, the way they can be mixed, there is a kind of, you can do 100 different things with a gin. You can make all sorts of drinks which are not about volume, but about taste and, if you like, uniqueness. So it's not surprising that as we trend away from bulk beer drinking, we become more and more specialised and spirits become the thing. They become the cool thing.
I think you've summed it up really, really well. I mean, the way that we're drinking now is a lot different from back in the 70s. We're drinking 25% less per head now than we did back in the 70s and 80s. But and there is a consumer shift towards spirits because of what you say. And so what's happening is that and consumers are drinking less, but they're going up the value chain. So they're drinking less, but maybe spending a little bit more on something a bit more special, something that they can sort of sip and savour rather than, dare I say it, down the pint at the pub.
Yeah.
And that's the trend, and that's absolutely proven in New Zealand and in other countries around the world. And gin is at the forefront of that because of what you say. You can mix it and have fun with it.
Yeah. I guess too, this might be also the growing consumer power of women. In regards to gin, and I'm not trying to be sexist here or gendering this, but it would seem to me that cocktails and stuff like that are further away from blokey beer drinking than you could possibly get, and it might be the consumer power of women that's also driving this change.
Well, without a doubt, but also cocktails can be anybody. So if one of the trends that we have seen, and particularly in around COVID, when we were all locked down, were and post-COVID, of course, is that if you go to someone's house for dinner and you have a cocktail, then of course you can have your preference. So if you don't say a red or a white wine, you say, well, I'll have a gin martini, or I'll have a whiskey sour, or whatever. And so there's been this growth in the ability for the consumer to match their palate to the type of cocktail. And that's been echoed through just about every decent bar in New Zealand.
All right, let's take gin as the example, and you say, just how much better than other spirits is gin doing in New Zealand?
It's grown so that I was just looking at some of the figures, so I could make some sense before coming on, and the growth in gin volume. This is New Zealand gin. There's not the imports, but just the New Zealand gin. As near as it's since 2013, there's been a 420% growth in gin volume in New Zealand.
Wow,
that's the in market, and that compares to the fundamental stalwart of the spirits world, that's whiskey. That's grown only by about 125%. So you can see that this gin phenomenon, as I say, echoed in other countries around the world, but certainly seen here, has grown off the back of a growing New Zealand distilling industry. So, 10, 15 years ago, you could say there were about 20 or 30 truly commercial distillers. There are 165 today.
Whoa.
What are they making? Gin. Why are they making gin? Because of its ability to turn around and create a beautiful product relatively quickly, and therefore get a product to market, get some cash coming in the door, and so you can then afford to put down the darker spirits, the whiskies, the bourbons, the rums, which have to stay in barrel for a number of years.
Right.
You can afford to do that.
Okay, so you can get in production quickly with gin.
Yes, you can. And you can make it unique. And this is one of the other things that consumers want, and we all know this. This is not just.
So we're way past the days of Beefeaters and Seagrams, right? Which I think as kids are, I don't know, the images of that branding of those bottles are burnt into my mind, right? From various parties my parents would go to. Seagrams and Beefeaters.
Oh, don't get me wrong. The international gins are still the most popular in New Zealand. The largest selling gin in New Zealand is Gordon's. By far, by volume. So what we're talking about with the New Zealand distilled gins, and I use the term advisedly, is that they are the artisan boutique product.
So it's a bit like the craft beer, isn't it?
Without a doubt, except we're now beginning to take the world by storm. So what do Kiwis do? They start a business, they get a local market, and then what do? They put their product, whatever it is, in a suitcase, and they go offshore and they try and sell it. And the New Zealand distilling industry is no different. And so we have our products, our beautiful artisan products in Australia, in the UK, in the US, and they're winning awards, so particularly the gin.
All right, give us some examples.
The Roots gin out of Blenheim was awarded this year the world's best London dry gin at the 2023 London Wine and Spirits Fair.
Wow.
That follows in the footsteps of Scapegrace London Dry, which was awarded the same. It was the first big breakthrough award, actually, one of the first. And it was awarded the best London Dry at the London Wine and Spirits Fair back in, I think, 2018. Then we have the Waldian Coromandel gin that was awarded the world's best classic gin in 2022. We've had the Karori gin distillers win awards in Australia. So, we are beginning to do what we do best: make wonderful product and sell it to the world.
All right, and this isn't as if you like, as planned as something like we look to our last great international spirit success was 42 Below vodka, right? But that was all about marketing. That was very, very strategic and everything. This feels more uniquely Kiwi. Let's give it a crack overseas, see how we go.
Well, don't you see how it kind of fits into the Kiwi culture of let's give this thing a go, and let's take our. I hate using the number 8 wire analogy, but you kind of get that idea.
Yeah.
Let's give this a crack. Let's give it the Kiwi ingenuity. Let's make it our own.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what we've done in other areas, isn't it? Let's make it our own, then let's make it better. Let's make it New Zealand, and then let's take it to the world.
Yeah. Have the Wowsers, the government-funded Wowsers, come for the spirits industry yet?
Well, they've come for us all, Sean. It doesn't matter if you're beer, wine, or spirits.
Or a vapour.
Or a vapour. There will always be debates about the place of beer, wine, or spirits in New Zealand's culture. All we point to is, as you've alluded to, is that our drinking culture is changing, and it will continue to change. More and more people are choosing to drink less or not at all, and isn't that great? They're making choices, and more informed choices. And if the culture keeps on changing like this, then I tell you what, where I'd be investing, and it's in the New Zealand spirits industry.
And what I'm saying, this is interesting, because as we move from a volume drinking culture to, I guess, a more specific or specialised drinking culture, it would seem to me people might be paying less for more specific products, for products like gin. I think overall, no matter what your stance on health, that's probably a good thing, but it also sounds like it's more fun than the booze barn culture we used to have. There seems to be something, and I'm sure it's marketing, and it's a created feeling, is that somehow, I don't know, a cocktail is classier or nicer people drink cocktails or something like that. It seems more fun to me.
Well, I mean, I listen to some of the bar owners and some of these guys, and there was one that said something to me the other day that really caught my attention. He said, I've just changed my entire bar around so that the cocktail bit of it is now much larger and more prominent because that's what the consumer wants. And he said, and it's because the only value we add to beer and wine is that we chill it.
Yeah.
And but when you make a cocktail in front of someone, that's an experience, and it becomes personal, and it becomes theirs.
And it's an act of creation.
That's right. And the average alcohol strength of an average cocktail, not all of them, but an average cocktail is 1.5 to 2 standard drinks. Now,
the time it takes to bloody get one, Robert, you see, that's already having you drinking less. You can only have 2 or 3 in a night because you've got to wait for it.
That's right. But there you go. So, I mean, it's like, okay, yes, if you can match the change to our drinking culture with a change in the product, the type of product availability and its popularity, and we always talk about gin, but whiskies and the better tequilas and rums are just sort of trickling along behind on the coattails of the gin phenomenon, and the cocktail culture. And what do you get? You get a change in drinking culture coming along with a product that allows for the moderate enjoyment of wonderfully flavoured and presented cocktails. Yeah. And I just can't see a problem with that.
Yeah. Look, this is really interesting stuff. Of course, the country will have come to age when we have a whiskey that's as good as anything made in Speyside or anywhere else, Robert, in my humble opinion. I thank you very much for your time today. And I'm sure we've already had people pointing out that gin, for example, is keto-friendly. That beer and wine are full of carbs. Apparently gin is not. So,
no spirits have carbs in them. No full-strength spirits have carbs.
Yeah, and also someone has texted in, Robert, and says, I'm assuming all this gin is being produced while being in accordance with the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, which I'm sure it is. Hey, I thank you for your time this morning, Robert. We must catch up soon. That is Robert Brewer, from the Chief Executive of Spirits New Zealand. So there we go. Gin is the thing. It is in. Have you changed your drinking habits? Do you drink more high-end spirits? Interesting, because I think we are changing, and all the surveys show binge drinking is changing. Young people aren't binge drinking the way they used to be. Maybe we're growing up a bit and becoming more, More sophisticated even. I also want to know what's your, if you buy locally produced spirits, and I'm going to say I don't see a lot of locally produced spirits. Give us some names. Tell us some stories if you're a micro distiller or a small distiller in New Zealand. I'd love to hear from you on the show this morning, 0800 33 2283. And sure enough, gosh, I love you guys, because I asked for some information or for you to look at something, and here you go. Now, Lynn says, Dancing Sands Gin Distillery in Takaka. Boutique beauty. Wasabi gin sounds disgusting, but ended up being my favourite at the end of my tasting experience. I'd love to hear from Dancing Sands Gin Distillery. Gosh, there's a guy I met down there years ago in Takaka who was making, growing his own aloe vera plants and making his own tequila. Jeez, it was rocket fuel. I've got his card somewhere. I must look up. And maybe that was Dancing Sands. Scrap Grace Vodka, New Zealand made. Absolutely beautiful. Cheers, Fox. Okay. This text just says, congrats on annoying Jessica and Jennifer. Now that you have 1 foot in Corner Lux. And no, I'm not going to go down to Parliament and be a pain. I'm going to, there's ways of behaving, people. There's ways of behaving. And we've got, I think we've got Mr. Luxon on the 28th, actually. I'm pretty sure. Sure that's all go.